Live from our studio in Bethesda, Maryland. I'm Jon Garlick, and this is the Jon Garlick Show.
With Lacey Clontz.
With Lacey Clontz. Hello, Lacey.
Hi.
And right in between us here is Andrea Whitten, who is, you're like the counseling goddess at Safe Haven, right?
Sure.
Yes, you are. A counseling goddess at Safe Haven. And Andrea and I met because I was nominated for the Hope Award, and as is the theme this year, I almost won it.
You're always a winner to us, Jonathan.
We're going to keep that thing going. We almost win. It's like almost not ready for primetime players.
You know what they say about second place, right? First to lose. I'm kidding. I love you, I'm kidding.
Lacey.
I said you're a winner to me.
What is Mandy thinking about all this?
She's probably laughing.
Okay. Mandy's Lacey's mom.
After all the crap
All
you've
right.
said to me.
Andrea,
Andrea,
Andrea, get it right, Jonathan.
Andrea.
Get it together.
Andrea sounds more goddess-like.
It's fancier.
Well, Andrea.
He
Andrea.
will change your name. He does that.
Andrea, it's so good to have you here on our show.
Lord.
And we want to talk a little bit about, well, frankly, you're working on your PhD, is that right?
That's right.
Yes, okay. So tell us what you're working on.
So I studied, or I'm studying, I guess, burnout in counselors, and specifically how counselors recover from burnout after they have been burned out.
So did you get burned out while you were studying burnout?
I did,
So
yes.
that's kind of a vicious circle, isn't it?
It is.
Huh. And how did you get over your burnout, studying burnout?
That's a really good question.
That's why I asked it. It's important.
Yeah.
Lacey was getting burned out on things, and we'll have to see how she got out of it. But tell us, how did you come out of that?
I think the biggest thing was developing some boundaries.
How do you do that?
Oh,
How do you
boundaries.
do that?
Now, okay, so boundaries everybody has boundaries, and some have boundary issues.
Don't look at me.
But what kind of boundary problems can cause burnout?
I think the biggest one is bringing your work home with you. So I had a big tendency, I care a lot about my clients, all counselors do, right?
We care about our clients, yes.
So I would be thinking about them after work, I would be thinking about them before work, like it just sort of crowded into my everyday life in a big way. I also had a tendency to just work around the clock. So if somebody needed a 7 a.m. session, I was there. If somebody needed an 8 p.m. session, I was there. And it didn't leave a lot of room for much anything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yourself.
You're right.
And it's important, I've been a counselor for 22 years, but a lot of my counseling work was with the sheriff's office. I was the mental health officer and was on call 24/7 and talked to people out of suicide and barricaded people. And so all that on-call stuff really occupies your day. Now, thankfully, I had law enforcement and then crisis work, which balanced. But when I retired, went into private practice, I had to make a conscious decision that I don't want to work like that anymore.
Right.
So I set my schedule up, and I do pretty good. I do pretty well, and I have Fridays as an office day, right? And the advice I give, I'm a LPCS. The advice I give my supervisees is to, if you can, leave a half hour between sessions.
Yes.
Yes. So do you do that?
I don't.
No, you don't.
I feel like that would add up throughout the day, though. And then
Well, it all depends on what you're doing. So, in private practice, you get to decide how many hours you want to work and therefore how much money you want to make, right? If you're working for an agency, you may not have that choice. And I've got some supervisees that are working in an agency, and they're like, "No, you're gonna see back-to-back clients, and you can write your progress notes when you get home." And that's going to lead to burnout, right?
Right.
And it also leads to bad progress notes.
Right.
So you've seen 10 clients today, and what was the first one? Right? So I don't like that. I like that half hour, because what I do is I finish with my client, I update their progress note. I also do my own billing because it's a piece of cake with Blue Cross. So I do my billing, and then I bring up the progress note for the next client from the previous session to see where I am. And that just takes the stress off.
Yeah.
Right. So that was one of your major boundaries, was taking work home,
Yes.
having no personal life.
Right.
Right. And how did you stop that?
It was hard because some of it involved cutting back on my client load, which I really didn't want to do in the beginning. But over time, people sort of finished up, and so I just stopped adding on new clients to my schedule, and that meant that I could finish on my day a little bit earlier. I did start spacing people out a little bit more. A half hour is a really good idea. I started doing like 10, 15 minutes, and that meant that I wasn't running into other people's sessions, which was happening before. So that was a huge help, and just having a life outside of work again was a huge help.
Now that half hour gives me flexibility. If I have a client that needs to go over a little bit, I've got some time to play with it.
Right.
So, yeah, I like that half hour.
Yeah.
Now your research is all about counselors and burnout.
That's right.
So that your burnout came from a boundary of clients. What are some other examples of counselor burnout?
A lot of it has to do with that, but what I found that was interesting, although not surprising from some of my own experiences and probably not from yours either, is that one of the biggest reasons that counselors become burned out is not so much because of their clients or even their boundaries with their clients so much, but it's more about the systemic issues. So for example, being on call, and being on call a lot, or working for an agency that tells you you have to see clients back to back to back with no break in between, and then having to do your progress notes at home, having very little support, so poor supervision is a big piece, or having supervision that's provided by the agency and the supervisor is not so great, but you don't feel like you can get a new supervisor because it's paid for by the agency that you work for. So it was a lot of those kind of factors, and it was interesting how many of the people that I talked to in my dissertation research that said that it was actually their clinical relationships that helped them to realize that they were burned out, so to realize that it was a problem, because again, we care so much about our clients. Once they started to see that their burnout was impacting their ability to show up and be effective with their clients, that was sort of that light bulb moment of, oh gosh, now I have to do something about this and make some changes. And everybody that I talked to, I don't think this is the only way to recover, but everybody in the study that I did ended up leaving their agency job, and they actually all went into private practice.
Sure, because the basis of my whole theory of practice is action is the cure. Right. So if you're depressed, you got to take an action. Right. If you're anxiety, you got to take an action. If you're burned out, you got to take an action. So giving too much to our clients, being too invested in our clients, is just another word for codependence. Now, and Lacey loves to talk about codependence. You do, not that you're codependent, but you have always talked about codependence, right? Right. We had that whole Valentine's Day thing where we.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So. Have you seen that? Is that what you're describing then? Is counselor codependence?
It's a bit of that. I think what's interesting is that a lot of the systems that we tend to work for, I think maybe inadvertently, but they encourage that kind of codependence. So there is this sort of core belief that I think a lot of counselors walk into the profession with that says, I'm responsible for fixing my clients, or I'm responsible for my clients healing. And then when their agency says, well, you need to see this many people and all of these people are relying on you and we're giving you very little support, it sort of adds to that belief or justifies that belief. And so I think they walk in with this sort of codependent belief, and then it gets justified by the systems that they work for, instead of walking in with that codependent belief and then the system going, no, actually, you should take care of yourself, and you should space out your clients, or you should have great support, these kinds of things. And so it sticks around for a lot longer and leads them to becoming burned out.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about self-care now in the program at JSU, and it's in all the magazines, self-care. Yeah. And do you think in your research, do you think as a profession that counselors are doing better at self-care?
I wish I could say yes.
Yeah.
I would like to say, because I adjunct teach at UAB, so I get the chance to talk to kind of the up-and-coming counselors. I think my generation of counselors, maybe not so much, but I think we're doing better. I think those of us who have gone through burnout and are now on the other side have recovered. We sort of learned the hard way and are doing better. But I do hear it talked about a lot more in classes, and I talk to my classes about it a lot more. the sort of counselors that are coming up now seem like they maybe are walking in with better boundaries than at least I know I had at the beginning of my career. So it makes me hopeful because it is being talked about a lot more and boundaries are becoming more normalized, whereas when I was coming up, it was like, that was not at all the norm. It was, you should be overworking yourself. You should be overextending yourself if you're going to be a good counselor.
Oh, no. And how many counselors have you, maybe in your research with burnout, run into that? We see this sometimes in counselors. They go into counseling to counsel themselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to become a counselor and I'm going to use my clients to become a better me. And it's a weird balancing act. Well, it's a codependent thing.
Okay.
And it's not as bad as it sounds. It sounds like, okay, you're my client and I'm just talking about me all the time. But what I think it is, it's more subtle than that. It's my clients represent something about me, and by helping my clients heal, I'm helping myself. And so you run into that. Yeah. So does that increase your likelihood of burnout?
Yeah, it seems like it all comes down to how self-aware of it you are. I talk to a lot of counselors who go into specific specialties within counseling because of their own life experiences. And it seems like if they know that that's what they're doing on the front end and they're doing their own therapy, like their own personal therapy with their own counselor, that it doesn't come out so much. They still, I think there's what I would consider sort of a healthy version of that and a not so healthy version of that, right? Like the healthy version is sort of the gratification that we all get just from being helpers and those sort of like light bulb moments that you sometimes have with clients because you're telling them something, but in telling them something, you hear something that you actually needed to hear that you didn't realize. So I think there's that. But I think the not so healthy version is when people aren't recognizing that maybe my own life experience was the driving force behind me, say, wanting to work with trauma, for example. And so I'm carrying a lot of my own biases and assumptions and hurt, like wounds that I've not healed personally, into my therapeutic relationships. And then inadvertently, like you said, sort of subtly using my clinical relationships to try to work on some of that or heal some of that in some way. And because there's none of that self-awareness, you're not doing any of that outside work, it could negatively impact your client, obviously.
Yeah, you could have all kinds of triggers. You know, if you're trying to heal from trauma and you're working with trauma clients,
right?
And then you're triggered, and then they're triggered. Now you got a mess in your office.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how much time we got? Like 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to take a break a little early, and then we'll come back, and Lacey can tell us all about how people come to her to solve their problems. Right.
Yay.
And all her codependent relationships. So stay with us here on the Jon Garlick Show.
You may not believe it, but it's true. The 2024 Team 1 Chevys are here. All 2324 Silverado light duties have 2.9% financing for 72 months. The hottest new 2024 Team 1 Chevy Blazer, 1.9% financing and no payments till April. And the #1 selling family vehicle, the Equinox, 24 models. You got it, 1.9% financing and no payments till April. Team 1 Chevrolet, home of the best people, the best service, period.
Some say college isn't for single parents or people who work full-time. I'm here to prove them wrong. I'm a first-generation American, the father of Dion, and a non-traditional student at Gadsden State Community College. As a sergeant in the Army National Guard, I've watched soldiers with degrees progress faster in their careers. So today, I'm in school, involved in the Veterans Upward Bound program, and excited to see what's in store for my career. I truly am earning my wings at Gadsden State.
I'm Alan Parnell, the Parnell Insurance Agency. We've been here in Oxford and Alabama, Tallapoosa, Georgia since 1990. With Auto Owners Insurance, we're able to give customers competitive pricing along with excellent coverages. Parnell Insurance can handle all of your personal, commercial, and life insurance needs. We have a very experienced staff, both personal and commercial. All together, we've got about 125 years experience. Come see what our insurance agency can do for you in Oxford, Alabama, and Tallapoosa, Georgia.
Auto Owners Insurance.
At Campers Unlimited, we offer a no-pressure experience, no hidden fees, and great service after the sale, making us one of the fastest-growing RV dealers in the Southeast. With our second location in Oxford, we offer a great selection of over 220 campers from top brands, including Grand Design. Our mission is to help friends and family spend time together in the great outdoors. At Campers Unlimited, you aren't just a customer, you are family. Check out our inventory at campersunlimited.net or come see us at Gaston or Oxford.
Welcome back. We're here with Andrea Whitten.
Andrea?
Andrea. She's getting a PhD. So, of safe haven counseling.
Yes.
Now, briefly, safe haven counseling does what? Provides free counseling, is that right?
Yeah, well, so we provide low-cost counseling.
Low-cost counseling,
It can be free just depending on your financial situation, so we try to just meet people where they are with what they can afford.
You base it off of like a sliding scale situation? Okay.
Yes.
That's very important because some
Yes.
people have, I'm in private practice, I take Blue Cross. I have a private pay rate that's somewhat less than that, but I'm not doing low-cost counseling.
Right.
I'm counseling the worried well and others. And so you have to do that. Now, little background. We skipped all that at the beginning. So where are you from?
So I'm originally from Ohatchee, Alabama.
Okay. You grew up in Ohatchee?
Yes.
Ohatchee High School?
That's
Great.
right.
Fantastic.
Where did you go to college?
So I did my undergrad at JSU,
Yeah.
and then I did my graduate degree at Middle Tennessee State,
And what's your undergraduate degree in?
psychology.
Psychology. So psychology to counseling, and now you're in a PhD program
At University of Alabama.
and your all but dissertation, is that right?
Yes, that is right.
Yep.
2 weeks to go.
ABD, all but
Yes.
dissertation, 2 weeks, and you're going to. So, tell us about the defense process. The dissertation is original research. You have to write this extensive paper with instruments that are testing for brand new stuff. And you did yours on burnout,
Right.
trying to develop new research into burnout. And so you write this paper, and you're working with a group of other PhDs, or maybe one or two, that are advising you.
Right.
Now, you get it all written, your advisor's like, yeah, this is a good paper. Then what happens?
So basically, it's kind of, I'm not sure how University of Alabama's process applies to other universities maybe, but in our program, it was a sort of multi-step process. So I actually had to go through, the defense I'm going into in 2 weeks is my third defense. So I first had to write sort of a mini paper, and by that I mean like 30-ish pages. I had to defend that. That was the prospectus, which basically says, this is sort of the idea of what I would like to do. And then if they say yes on that, then you go into your proposal. That's a bigger version of what I would like to do. So the whole dissertation is 5 chapters. The proposal is the first 3 chapters.
Okay.
So then from there, they tell you you're good to go. You can do the thing that you said you wanted to do. We think this looks good. And you submit for IRB approval, the Institutional Review Board, for them to say you're ethical, you're allowed to do the thing. It's not going to hurt anybody for you to do this study, which is important.
Yeah.
Very.
And then from there, you conduct the study, and then you write the last 2 chapters on what you learned from the study, basically.
Okay.
So then the chair, so I have a committee of 5, and the chair of my committee says, hey, yeah, this looks good, sends it out to the rest of the committee. The rest of the committee agreed, this looks good, you're allowed to defend, which is the news that I got literally this morning.
Oh, wow.
And so now I'm able to actually fully defend on the first.
And what is the defense process?
Yes. So, so the defense process, it's just like a 2-hour meeting, and you go in, you get to put together a whole presentation that basically says, this is everything that I've done over the course of my dissertation research, kind of summarizing everything that the gigantic paper says pretty much. And then after you've presented all of that, the committee gets to kind of grill you a little bit. I'm sure my committee will be very nice if they happen to be watching this. So hopefully they'll be nice. But they get to ask you all of these questions. So you answer those to the best of your ability. Then they leave and sort of deliberate, come back after however much time, 20, 30 minutes, and let you know whether or not you passed. And then at that moment, if you pass, then you are, in my case, Dr. Whitten.
Yeah. Nice. Very
That's
good.
a hectic 20 to 30 minutes, though, waiting for that.
It's rough.
And you know what one of the coolest things is about getting your PhD? You've seen graduations and people wear the mortar boards, and when you have a PhD, you get to design your own hat.
I didn't know that.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. You
Get
get
to
to
it, girl.
design your own
Pinterest.
hat. So you have to don't just that's why you see when you see the doctors all standing up there at graduation, they have all these different things that they're wearing. And you're like, why are they doing that? And I asked, and they said you get to design your own
Wow.
whatever that is. which for a brief odd moment was, I think I want to get a PhD just so I can do that. So I can have an odd hat. Because you know how I like hats, right?
Yes.
So
You would do that.
I would do that.
You would
but
go through all of that
just
hard
to,
work,
Yeah.
years of hard work, just so I could design a hat
Now I got a hat. Woohoo!
and an accent to match it.
Yep. Yeah. Little trivia that Lacey probably doesn't know, but you might. When you get your
Hey.
master's, you have the robe, and the robe has that sleeve that's open, right? Why is that like that?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I don't know either.
This goes back to the days in England, in Oxford University, where the master's students would carry a little glass of wine in there so nobody would see it, and they would be able to, during these long ceremonies, drink a glass of wine.
It's amazing.
I feel like people don't really hide it as much now.
Well, no. Little
the flask
little
out.
pour. Yeah. Hide the flask, yes. So, now we were talking about something off air, Lacey. You brought up something, and I can't remember now what it was.
I was just saying, I feel like if I were a counselor, a big burnout thing for me would be if I have a client and they just, like you said, ghost, and I never get to follow up with them, and it's just incomplete. Like, how do you cope with that? And I would worry about them all the time.
Yes, yeah. That was a big problem for me early
Sure.
on. Like I said, I tended to carry my work home with me quite a bit.
Yes.
I think some of it, experience helps a ton, because over time you start to notice trends and like why people ghost. Like you have a general idea. So one big reason is they've come for a few sessions, maybe more than that, maybe 6, 12, something like that. Enough to start doing a little bit better, but not quite enough to have work done with the deeper reason that they came in. But because they're feeling a little bit better and maybe not quite ready to do that deeper work,
Yeah.
that's when they tend to stop scheduling and you don't hear from them ever again. So you notice when that might be coming. Another big reason is if somebody comes in and maybe they share a little bit more than they were ready to share, like they thought they were ready in the moment,
And they're
they leave
embarrassed,
and they're
kinda.
like, ugh, they just weren't ready to dig into it. You might never
Yeah.
hear from that person again. And then of course it really just wasn't a good fit. And
That happens too.
you feel that, which as a new counselor was really, really hard because you're nervous with every single client.
I'm sure.
But you feel that lack of the click, just like in regular everyday relationships, your relationship with your counselor should feel like good and cohesive, and you get along well with that person. And so if you have a client come in that you just don't have that like click moment with, it's going to raise your anxiety a lot as a new counselor. But that's also somebody that maybe like they didn't want to tell you they didn't want to come back in, but you may never hear from them ever again either. And just trying to not take any of those reasons personally. Like I know that I'm not going to be everybody's perfect counselor, and at this point that is okay. Early days, it took, talking to my own therapist about it a good bit too. So having your own support system there, I think, is huge for helping with stuff like that.
And I think it's also very important that therapists have therapists.
Yes.
Yeah. And people come and they may, they tell you when you're in school that you inform the client how many sessions they're going to have, and you do the intake and you have your sessions, and when you're done you have this last session where we're done. It doesn't happen like that.
No.
It never happens like that. People, they come, they feel better, and they go, and then they come back. Right? And so that's a counseling role, is people feel better, they go do what they're going to do, and then they need a little tune-up every now and again. And that's perfectly fine. It doesn't necessarily fit into CBT or whatever theory you're trying to work with, but it does, it is real. It's what people need. They just need to touch base with somebody that they've learned to trust. And then you have other clients that are working through, particularly with trauma, they're working through steps to make things happen, and they get stuck, and they go backwards, and they get better, and so it's good stuff. And Lacey should be a counselor, I think.
You think so?
I think so.
Why?
Because you Dear Abby, we should be doing a Dear Abby show. And get people to call
That
in.
sounds fun.
Lacey's a dating expert,
Oh, unfortunately.
right? You are. We have this. We did a Valentine's Day show,
Oh, that was
and we had people call in, and there was no guest. It was just Lacey and I, and we had people call in, and Lacey has great advice when it comes
Thank
to
you.
dating. She's very insightful.
I take that as a compliment.
Yes, well, you should. You're very insightful, and it's good. And you also said when we were off air and talking about the not letting go when the client leaves, and you're like, oh my God, they're gone, and you did say something about that being more in tune to a female counselor, or male
because,
counselor.
yeah.
And yeah, I think I agree with you. We are capable of compartmentalizing. Disconnecting is not the right word, but it's because we're basically working with half a brain, and you guys are working with a fully connected brain, so that everything. See, Sparky and I, everything we deal with doesn't necessarily have to have an emotion tied to it. It can just be, yeah.
What it is.
It is. Okay. How you feel about that? What do you mean? Okay. But you guys have this amazing brain where everything has an emotion somewhere in there.
It's not fun.
No,
It's really not.
It can be not fun, and it can be overwhelming. And yes, some people control it to the point where, they stuff it down, which can be a problem. But yeah, you guys have this amazingly emotional brain. It's good. It's good stuff. Yeah. And as a counselor, I get to sit back and watch all that. And when it comes to couples counseling, trying to explain to guys like Sparky and me how to have a relationship with somebody like Lacey, they're like, oh my God. Poor Nikki. We got to get Nikki in here and give him an education.
Oh my goodness.
Well, Nikki's dating you. It's like he's
Blessed?
Sure, but it's more like he's been driving a Toyota Corsica,
Where's this going?
and now he's driving a Ferrari.
Oh, thank God.
And he just knows how to step on the gas and make it go fast, but sometimes in the corners he's getting a little loose. And
The weirdest analogy ever. What?
you'll have to talk to Nikki about that. It will make sense to him.
Okay.
Ask him what kind of car you are.
That'll be fun.
So, Andrea, your dissertation's next week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's great. And when is the next? Now you guys do stuff for Safe Haven. When's the next event?
Yes. So right now we're down to just the yearly gala. So our next one will be next March. But we are constantly raising money because, like you said, the biggest thing that we do is we offset the cost of counseling so that people can see anybody in their community that they want to in terms of counselors. Yeah.
So you do. So it's different. You don't just have counselors that they go to for low cost. You supplement whatever counselor they're going to.
Right.
Oh, that's a great deal. That's a great
That's
idea.
wonderful.
That is a wonderful idea. And how do people get a hold of you if they need to contact you?
Yes, so you can go to our website. It's safehavencounseling.org, and that has our telephone number and email address for both myself and then our administrative director.
Andrea, good luck with your dissertation defense.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us tonight. It's been great fun.
Thank
Quick
you so
question,
much.
if we have time, what is your number one tip for counselors who are suffering burnout? If you could say one thing to them right now, what
Real
would you
quick,
say?
we got like 10
Boundaries,
seconds.
all the boundaries.
Okay.
Boundaries. All right.
One
so
word.
be sure you have boundaries, and action is the cure. We will see you again next Wednesday night here on The Jon Garlick Show.
Have a good night.